What is going on, guys? Hey, I wanted to come back. I wanted to bring a story about Vivek Ramaswamy, and he's talking to Charlamagne the God on the Breakfast Club, and they're talking about how, over time, this country has evolved. We have changed. And again, we are founded on greatness. We are founded on awareness. Again, being aware of what is right and what is wrong. And this country didn't invent slavery, but along with England, we ended slavery in the Western world. But this country was not perfect, never was. Doesn't claim to be. But again, we evolve when we become aware that we're doing something wrong, immoral, whatever. You change, you become different. But again, you have to become aware of that first. So again, when we look into the past from the lens of the future, of the present time, we look at the past and we judge the past from present standards. We're not doing it a justice. We're not. Again, we're judging the past by the moral standards of today. And it's not correct. That's not right. That's not real. Again, over time, when you become aware of what you're doing and what you're doing is not right, or what you're doing, isn't the best of things, you change, you become different. And so anyways, Vivek tells his story about John Quincy Adams. And again, what this man did and who he influenced. But guys, now watch this.
So we should call ourselves to be the person who bucks the trend of their time to say, I'm going to speak on my own conviction and do what's different than being the product of my own time. Because anybody can parrot what the slogan is of their day. But the hard thing to do is to say the pack is running this way and I'm going this way instead anyway because it's grounded on my conviction.
People like John
That's
Adams,
what we need.
People like John Adams are the reason you can point at it and say it was wrong, though, because John Adams knew it was wrong.
Well, a lot of people are going to be doing things today that are different than the way that each of us is going to be living our lives and say the same thing. And 250 years from now, somebody else is going to be having the same conversation.
Thought it was wrong, clearly.
Abe Lincoln wasn't around then, man. That was still
later on.
That was still later on. And we'll just take the story down. We'll just pass this lineage down. We don't talk American history enough. Actually, it irritates me. A lot of conservatives talk about the importance of knowing history without actually just talking about history. Let's talk this through. So John Adams, you know who his son is? John Quincy Adams. He's the first non-founding father who became a president. Here's a funny fact about him. He was the first, so outside of the founding fathers, he was the first one who was elected president. He actually wasn't a great president. He was elected out after one term. People didn't love him. And so he tried to find everything else he could do. He went and tried to write some books, and he went and tried to start some nonprofits, and none of that spoke to him. He's the only president, John Adams' son, who went back to Congress after being a president. So he's elected to multiple terms of Congress. And you know what he went back to Congress with? Was one thing he regretted not doing as a president, was abolishing slavery. This is long before Abraham Lincoln comes along, okay? So he wanted to abolish slavery. His father was an abolitionist. He didn't accomplish much during his tenure as president. He was a good Secretary of State, but he was not a very good president. Think about the humility to say, I'm not even going to go to the Senate. I'm going to go become a congressman and get reelected multiple times with the mission of abolishing slavery. Now, here's what happens. There was a rule that Congress passes. It's called the gag rule, which stopped people from using the word slavery. Like they literally couldn't use the word slavery because they didn't want people to utter the word because it made them uncomfortable. So this guy's already been the U.S. president. Okay, so he has nothing to lose. He's just a congressman now. He says, I'm going to say the word. I'm going to say it, slavery. Slavery, slavery, slavery. There, Congress has set the rule that you can't say the word slavery. Well, I'm going to say it. So they censure him and have, just like they have today for George Santos or whatever, they'll have the equivalent of kicking him out of Congress. Mm-hmm. So they have his trial in Congress. And he uses his own personal trial, because this guy's got nothing to lose. They use his own personal trial for saying the word slavery when you're not allowed to say the word slavery to make the case for abolition from the stand of his own trial to being kicked out of Congress. At the end of that, they get rid of the gag rule. So you're allowed to say slavery, which opens up the debates that you're then allowed to have. So a year later, about a year or so later, he's given a speech on the Congress floor. I mean, it's amazing. This guy with this humility. He's given a speech on the Congress floor. He has a stroke in the middle of his speech. He dies right there. He doesn't die quite yet. They take him up to the upstairs room, keep him alive for another couple days. And eventually he dies up in that anteroom outside in the same Congress where he then devoted that later stage of his career. And they took volunteers for who's going to be the person who carries out his funeral rites and carries him out. And the guy who raises his hand and does it was a first-term congressman nobody had heard of, hadn't said a word, by the name of Abraham Lincoln. And so these are the stories of our history, man. We don't tell these stories anymore.
And
we celebrate. We put back our founding fathers, and we talk about how these people are slave owners, and we're going to dismiss the ideals they set into motion, without recognizing that, like us today, these are imperfect human beings that still strived and to be the best that they possibly could have, just as we do today. And so it bothers me deeply for us to just lazily reject that, as opposed to saying we acknowledge those imperfections, but we're founded on the pursuit of a more perfect union.
Absolutely, but the reason
the pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice for all.
The reason you can't just dismiss it and say, okay,
I'm not dismissing it, though. Do I sound like I'm dismissing it, Charlamagne?
Yes, but the reason
I disagree with you, man. And I think
the reason
that
you can't say
if you're going to
Thomas
put me in the
Jefferson-
category of the conversation we had and saying that I just dismissed it out of hand, I think that's unfair. I just think that's unfair.
I
don't think I dismiss it, but I acknowledge the totality of what a human being is, which is an imperfect and flawed human being who we can still celebrate.
I'm fine with that, but you can't.
That's what we have to be.
But you can't tell people just to ignore the fact that Thomas Jefferson.
I'm not telling people to ignore it, though,
Okay.
and this is what I think I'm in this to unite the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we're going to take this seriously, every one of us has to acknowledge the full nuances of our history in every direction. To say that we're not going to listen to Thomas Jefferson or that our founding was illegitimate because they were deeply imperfect and flawed is every bit as bad as somebody who's going to say that I'm going to entirely dismiss the fact that they were slave owners.
Anytime you say something like, like John Quincy Adams, what he did, what he was trying to do, and who he influenced, they don't want to hear that because, again, you're dismissing their pain. No, you're not. No, you are not dismissing their pain. Again, they just want you to pay more attention to it. They like the feeling they're getting off of that. They like the control. They like the power. They like to remain the victim. There is power in being the victim, which again is what people like to do. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of groups that like to do that today. Again, minorities, they do, but especially black folks. Women, not all women, not all black folks, but black folks, women, and again, not all, but a lot of them. You can't say, if you're a man, you can't say a thing about abortion. You can't say anything about that. You can't have an opinion. Well, guess what? I do. I have an opinion on this, whether you like it or not. Whether you want to hear it or not, I have an opinion. And guess what? I'm going to vote with that opinion. I am going to speak my mind by voting with that opinion. So again, if you don't want to have the conversation with me, fine. I'm still going to vote with that. But again, that's what they do. Same thing with the trans stuff. Well, again, you're dismissing trans people. You're putting them down. You're cis. You're whatever. It's like, I'm not putting people down, but I'm saying, quite possibly that could be a mental illness. You're sick. Anybody who wants to cut perfectly healthy body parts off because they feel like there's something else, again, that says to me there's something wrong with them. If I want to cut something off and get some kind of an animal part attached to me because I believe I'm part wolf or whatever. I mean, what kind of sickness is that? But again, man, that's what's going on the other way around. With the whole trans stuff, same thing. I mean, again, I'm not trying to put down anyone. But what I'm saying is, I mean, quite possibly, there's something wrong with you up here. It's not that you're actually born in the wrong body, it's something wrong with you. But again, if you dismiss anyone nowadays, if you say anything about, well, maybe there's something wrong up here, or maybe, there's other points of view with the slavery stuff that you're unwilling to look at, you're unwilling to bring to the forefront, you're unwilling to acknowledge. Same thing with abortion. Again, men can have opinions on that, and they do. But again, man, if you don't align with the people of color or the trans people or women or whatever, if you don't align with that and say, I understand your pain. Oh, I understand. I'm going to only accept that point of view. Again, that's not real. That's not reality. And again, that's a good way to keep people quiet. Because again, you don't want anyone ever speaking against what you have to say and what you believe. Because again, that's uncomfortable for you. It makes you feel bad. It makes you feel icky. It's like, oh, I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to feel bad about my views. So again, you be quiet. If you're not feeling the way I want you to feel, then I want you to be quiet. And again, man, that's what's happening. But anyways, guys, if you would, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Thanks.
You son of a